what we have going on very much so in America right now is that Donald Trump just this week says we're going to close the borders to all Muslims. Well, now he throws red meat to the right. He probably does more good work for ISIS recruiting than he could possibly do. But unfortunately, he's been strengthened by a weak left. You talk a lot about that, actually, about how this far left group, now what we're calling the regressives, ultimately end up strengthening a lot of ideas that they should be against. And that's what we're seeing with Trump.
And vice versa. Yeah, and vice versa. I was at a meeting today at The Guardian, which is where I work, and I love the place. And but it is Britain's leading left-wing newspaper. And people in the audience, their first questions were about Donald Trump. Their first questions were, and you could see. Perhaps I'm reading too much into the audience members and such, but Donald Trump was stopping her taking on reactionaries in, on the Islamist side. So, you've got, it's very hard to get the notion that there are two extreme rights. There is the white extreme right, and I wouldn't, until a few weeks ago, said Donald Trump was on it. He seems to be heading that way now.
Yeah.
And there is the religious extreme right, the Islamist extreme right. And you need to fight them both for the same reasons and with the same arguments. It is very difficult. People seem to find that very, very difficult to do. It strikes me as the only principled position. But I imagine if I walked onto any campus in America and said that, there'd be no platform.
Not only would there be no platform, but they'd be trigger warned. They'd go into a safe space, all the other stuff we're talking about. And then,
I never realized they were so frightening, Dave.
Right. I've had several guests that I didn't think were that frightening that for some reason have to have trigger warnings issued before they speak on campuses. So, look, a lot of this is happening in Europe first, which is another reason that I'm talking about it so much, because I don't want it to take hold here the way it has taken hold in Europe. What do you make of the far-right parties that are now winning across Europe, right? Marine Le Pen just won in France. I now see that in Denmark and in Sweden, far-right parties are leading in polls for the first time ever. Belgium. So this thing seems to be metastasizing right in front of our eyes.
Yeah, there are the reasons for that, Dave. The European Union, it's not like the USA. It's tried to be like the USA without the common culture, the common institutions. And as I'm fond of pointing out to people in the EU who want to be like the USA, I say, well, the USA had one hell of a civil war before it became the USA for today.
Right.
Do you want that? There are other reasons. There's two things I want to say. One you might quite like, the other maybe less so. The thing you might quite like is we seem to agree on this, is this. You can't run around shrieking your head off, having trigger warnings and safe spaces when, I don't know, a celebrity or a politician makes a slightly off-colour remark about homosexuals, or women, or slightly sexist remark about women, and have it leading the news, and columnists on the New York Times needing a cold shower to calm themselves down afterwards, and then ignore religious homophobia, including deadly religious homophobia among ethnic minorities. You just can't do that without paying a price, because don't think people aren't watching you. Don't think the rest of society, a lot of political writing on the left as well as the right, it's like it's a private club. They just talk to themselves. The right watches Fox News, the left watches Jon Stewart. They just talk to themselves. And it's like a private club, and everyone understands the rules. And they forget that outsiders are watching. They forget outsiders are saying, "You bloody hypocrites."
Yeah.
You will have one rule for white people and another rule for the rest, and you will not stand up to go back against the universal principles. So there is that. That does matter. Political correctness in Britain has become this kind of swear word, and it doesn't mean stuff that you would understand by political correctness. It means deep hypocrisy, misgovernment, ill government. So that's all true. You can blame the left for that. On the other hand, people who vote. How badly am I allowed to swear on your program?
Swear away, bring it, let's go.
People who vote for Donald Trump, there has to come a point where you just say, well, fuck off.
Right.
You're voting for Donald Trump. You're voting for Marine Le Pen. We will try. We will not, we will not give up on you. You're fellow citizens. But there comes a point where you just say, well, to hell with you. You are our opponents. The difficulty is, and it is come, I don't know if your American viewers know about this, we've now got the worst type of leftist leading our opposition party, the Labour Party, who's like a caricature. If I had to write an example of what the worst of the left is in Britain.
Jeremy Corbyn.
A guy called Jeremy Corbyn, yeah. The only good thing about him becoming Labour leader is books I wrote are now selling, like hotcakes. But I mean, my selfish point of view aside, is you've got a terrible right in America with Trump, in France with the National Front, in Sweden and Denmark and all these places, Poland, Hungary, it's popping up all over Europe. Not just because of immigration radicalism, partly because the European single currency has been one of the great economic mistakes. And then you've got a left in a space where a principled left should be. Certainly in Britain, you've got this kind of joke figure that would go along with any organisation, however fascistic, as long as it's anti-West. So, lots of people are feeling a bit politically homeless over here.
Yeah. Does it all feel like a perfect storm to you, what's going on right now? And again, this is the stuff that's after your book when we talk about the refugees and some of the economic problems in Europe and this, dealing with radical Islam. It was going on while you were writing the book, obviously, but it seems to me we have like 5 things right now that are all working at the same time.
Yeah.
Then you toss in social media, you toss in, that we see videos from everywhere. Now we can see beheadings, we can see bombings.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see religious violence and you can see state violence all the time. That we really have all of this happening at once, and it's leading to a very strange place.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing, Dave, we can say with certainty that whoever it was, Francis Fukuyama, who said after the fall of the Berlin Wall, this is the end of history, history's over. Boy, was that a stupid thing to say. And you can't. Let me go back to the point I made to you right at the start, that the weirdness and the hypocrisy and the awful betrayal of people you get on people who call themselves the left comes when they don't have a socialist alternative. They don't have, the Soviet Union falls, socialism collapses across the world, no one believes in it anymore. And that was fine for a while, if I may generalise in a very glib way. That was fine for a while because capitalism, or call it what you will, seems to be a great success story. Mm-hmm. Seemed to work. That's why Francis Fukuyama was not such an idiot when he said history was over. Well, ever since the crash of 2008, that system of liberal capitalism has failed. And that's why you've got this feeling of, perfect storm, too many things coming at us at once. It is not entirely... there's a wonderful phrase by the Italian socialist Antonio Gramsci: "The old is dead, the new cannot be born. In that interregnum, many strange forms will appear." Yeah. It seems like that. We don't know what comes next. We're not sure of what we've got. We're not sure it works anymore. Not sure it works for ordinary middle-class Americans watching your program. Their pay isn't going up. The super rich are getting richer. The American dream doesn't seem to quite work anymore, even with Obama. It's not quite clear where the alternatives to that are. And so you get these strange, abhorrent, freakish forms, which, when I wrote that book, as I said, people just kept saying to me, "Oh, Nick, those are just on the fringes." Well, now it's on the mainstream.
Going to that point, what about some of the tactics these guys use? And I want to talk a little bit about Chomsky, but first we can talk just sort of in the more broader sense. When I've seen the way these guys debate, or the way they treat topics, and again, everyone's racist and all that, they don't seem to mind if they get caught in lies. They love just throwing out the bomb, and then it spreads like wildfire on social media. And there's that famous saying, it takes 1 second to lie, but it takes a lifetime to get it back, or whatever it is. And it seems that a series of these guys, they love this. And I don't know, look, again, I'm not on the right, so I don't like the right. I've never been part of the right, so I police them differently, but I don't want to see this from my guys. So what do you think about just the tactics that they're using themselves.
Before we go any further, Dave, one question to you. Plain speaking, open heart.
Sure.
Does the right behave any better than that?
No, they do. Look, they don't. I'm dealing in America with Trump right this second with over-the-top bombacity. So, and again, this is why, look, I'm a guilty liberal in that sense, that sometimes I feel bad. I spend so much time on the guys on my side, and that I'm afraid, people ask me all the time, am I afraid that ultimately this will strengthen the right? But to me, it's like, if we don't stand up now, well, then the game is over. We just hand it to the right, which is what's happening, I think, with Trump.
Yeah. There is a long tradition of lying on the left. If you go back to Stalin, he got gullible people to believe in show trials where people confessed to impossible crimes that weren't committed. So there is that. I'm less interested. I'm less concerned about left and right than this. Here's something that happens with new media. You now have states. Fox News, I think, is a pretty bad thing. I think its main audience seems to be liberal journalists looking for easy material to write. But it's a bad day. You've got nothing to do. You've got no ideas. I know. I'll turn on Fox News. It's really good. You've now got states, Russia and Iran most notably, producing propaganda channels that are dedicated to pushing half-truths, conspiracy theories, lies. A jet shot down over the Ukraine. There's television channels in English who are pumping stuff out. Mm-hmm. So, whereas once, if you're on the left in America, you just have to go on and on about something Nixon was putting out or something in the Wall Street Journal, even something on Fox News. And if you're on the right in America, you would complain about New York Times, deliberately covering something up. Now you've suddenly got whole states with their secret services, their foreign offices, their propaganda arms behind them, pumping material into the West, which is incidentally taken up by both the far left and the far right. It's very difficult, certainly in Britain, as I say, things have gone much, much further than they have in America. It's very, very difficult to tell apart the people who support Putin, for instance, and Russia today. You've got Marine Le Pen doing it, who is the leader of the French far-right party. You've got George Galloway, who's this strange combination of leftist and Islamist in Britain. And so you've got a kind of merger of the extremes against liberal democracy. And they're both equally keen on Putin. They're both equally sympathetic to Iran. What matters to them most is building a conspiratorial narrative.
So in a lot of ways, we really could blame sort of mainstream media for this craziness, right? Because it seems to me that for a long time, mainstream media, which had no competition before the digital age, they did such a poor job that then they handed everything over to the digital side. And I think for a while, the online media, for the first few years of it, I think they did do a really nice job in breaking stories and getting out information. Yeah, that you wouldn't get otherwise. And now it seems like the gloves are off, and now anything's true. Nobody knows who to trust.
There's a lot of truth in that, and I don't accept some kind of binary division between new media and old media. There's good journalism, there's bad journalism.
I like that.
But here's the problem, Dave. If you are me at The Guardian or The Observer or on the LA Times, you're talking to a reporter on the LA Times, and you start saying, well, you've done a terrible job, you're allowing all these cranks, these fruitcakes, these flim-flam merchants from all over the world to walk all over you. The man or woman at the LA Times says, look, Dave, our business model's collapsed. We're trying to staff bureaus in Peking, in Beijing, in Tehran. Give me a break. We can barely get a reporter up the road to San Francisco. Right. The business model for, if you like, serious journalism, particularly serious forest journalism, is getting hard and hard to sustain. Although I'm sure the LA Times and newspapers and across America are, to my knowledge, from having met them and work on them, are really dedicated to trying to keep it going. But in the end, the lack of money talks. Money talks, but the silence that comes from the lack of money is a silence which just closes debate. So the gap is just being filled. What worries me is not people talking rubbish or people talking drivel. They always have. Is where are you going to get the reliable reports on what is happening in Peking? Where are you going to get the reliable reports on how Putin is manipulating European opinion? That's getting harder and harder to do.
Okay, well, as someone that I consider an expert in this space, how do you decide who to trust? I really don't know anymore. I follow a lot of different organizations, right, left, middle, as reputable and some off the deep end, and I try to pilfer out some knowledge and some truth. And I try not to only follow things that reinforce my beliefs, which is another huge problem that social media has given us. But how do you decide who to trust?
Well, David, you're probably going to accuse me of being horribly old-fashioned and stuff, but there are still organisations I trust. I still trust an article on New York Times news pages, unless it's because I know there's a very, very strong editing process there, and its opinion pages are separate, and what have you. Now that may change as the business model for journalism goes down, but I still do.
Well, look, they had an op-ed on the front page for the first time in 95 years, just last week.
How disgraceful. Let's go around. We ought to go around and have a demo outside. We don't want your bloody opinions, we ought to say. Give us some news.